and click on that link and fill out the Google survey. That'll be an easy way to have people sign in here.
All right, we can go ahead and get going. Welcome everybody. Nigel, I'm gonna go ahead and get us started.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you guys for joining us for our encore presentation of Taking Your Youth Court Virtual. It is our pleasure to walk you through what we've learned so far and some of our strengths and weaknesses and some of the trial and error that we've done. We're going to go ahead and start off by introducing ourselves. My name is Nigel Holly. I'm a commissioner for the city of Lancaster in Antelope Valley. I also work with a lot of youth through my nonprofit, Pathways for Success, where we do mentoring and we work with at-risk youth, more specifically truant at-risk youth. And now I would like to introduce my co-presenters, starting with Karen Green.
Hi, thanks everybody for joining us today for this recorded session. I've been working with youth court since 1990 and served on the National Task Force to establish youth courts as a nonprofit across the nation. And that resulted in the formation of the National Association of Youth Courts. And I was honored to serve as the second president of the National Association a few years back. Out of that effort came the opportunity to start state associations. And with a $5,000 grant from the National, we were able to launch the California Association of Youth Courts. So I serve as the treasurer of that organization now. I ran the Placer County Peer Court program for a little over 20 years. My original life was as a high school counselor, and this work is wonderful, and it's exciting to see all the growth that's taking place and the opportunities that are coming forth and the challenges. And so we're pleased to be able to present this opportunity to learn about how to take your youth court virtual, which is a challenge, but we're going to give it a try. Thank you. And now Mickey.
Hi, I'm Mickey Chahusky, and I'm a program specialist in the San Bernardino City Unified School District in their Positive Youth Development Department, where I facilitate our restorative youth court. I am a longtime educator. I actually went to school in San Bernardino City Unified as well. And I am the secretary for the California Association of Youth Courts, which has been a great organization for me to both join and participate in, as well as a resource for our youth court. And Nigel, back to you.
So we'd also like to know who's all here. So as Sasha stated earlier, there's a link in the chat box for you to just go ahead and post your information so that we'll know who's all here. We can also follow up with you later by providing you with these slides for this presentation. Normally we'd be a little more formal and give everyone an opportunity to introduce themselves, but in lieu of time, we're going to ask you to post your information in the chat box. Also, what we would like to do is let you know that if you have a question, I think we're a little before the poll. Okay. If you have any questions, well, let's go ahead and take the poll, and then I'll tell you what to do if you have any questions. So go ahead and select what platform you use for your conferencing as of now.
And you can continue while they're
click one and then hit submit.
Sorry, Nigel, you can finish doing that while people are answering.
Oh, okay.
We're waiting.
Okay, so while you guys are selecting what platform you use, I'm going to walk you through how to ask your questions. So if you just have a general question while someone is presenting, we're going to ask you to post that question in the chat box. If you would like to have a question on a specific topic during the presentation, then the way you do that is you're going to click on where it says participants. When you click participants, you will see an icon at the bottom of a pop-up box. And in that pop-up box, just click on raise your hand. and then we will see that you have raised your hand to ask a question. There are also some other icons in there, such as thumbs up, applaud, I need a cup of coffee, or to take a break, yes, no, and some other things in there. So just kind of we're learning this platform, and this is for you to kind of get familiar with Zoom. After we hit submit and do the poll questions, then I'm going to have you all raise your hand. Okay. Do we have the poll results?
We're ready.
Okay. Great. So it looks like 100% of the people on today's presentation use the Zoom platform. One of the very first things you're going to need to do to take your youth court virtual is to select the platform in which you'll use to go virtual. So since you all are using Zoom, it actually makes our job a little bit easier, because now we'll walk you through how to do some of the steps in Zoom to take your youth court virtual. So before we do that, let's go ahead and have everyone practice at raising your hand. Again, you're going to press participants, and then you're going to select raise your hand. And we just want to see everyone do it, just to kind of get used to engaging the platform. Okay. So again, that's going to be select participants. You'll have a chat box pop up, and then just click raise your hand. All right. Okay, so moving forward, we use several different platforms, as you see. However, we're going to focus on Zoom today, and now Mickey will walk you through transitioning.
So one of the reasons that we are using Zoom is because it has some functionality that the other platforms don't necessarily have. And probably the most important of it in terms of trying to run a youth court is the breakout rooms. When you're transitioning to the virtual platform, after you've decided, if you're going to use Zoom or another platform, it's how are you going to operate your court, and what rooms are you going to need to move from your in-person court to your virtual court. So some of the things that you might want to think about is a waiting room. And most of you were in the waiting room before you came into the session today, waiting to be admitted. That is a really nice feature for two reasons: security. It allows you to admit folks that you are expecting, and also when you're ready for them. If you're not ready for a certain participant, like the family, you can have them in the waiting room. The courtroom, the place where you're going to have your hearing, a jury room, and you may need other breakout rooms based on whatever a number of cases that you're having in that day or your unique needs. You can have a number of breakout rooms with the Zoom platform. The other thing you need to think about is if you normally have observers or other folks that come into your hearings, how are you going to handle them? How are you going to handle confidentiality and issues like that? So those are some of the first things that you need to think about. As I said a moment ago, the waiting room, you don't have to have it. You can have people just come straight into Zoom, but this is your best screening and security process. And having a facilitator or someone who is monitoring that can allow that only authorized persons enter. I know some of you have probably heard about the Zoom bombing that went on in schools in the early days of our at-home education process. You don't want to have that in a hearing. So that's something that really helps with that. The other thing is if there's somebody gets in, Zoom allows you to remove them. So you don't have to panic if you accidentally let somebody in that shouldn't have been in. You can remove them. It's also another good thing for a breakout room, because if there's somebody gets in early, you can move them also to another spot. Now, when we're right now in what we call the main room. So when we're having discussions today, the room that you launch into when you're admitted, we call the main room. The jury room should be a breakout room from your main room, because everybody that's coming into your court is going to land in this space. So for privacy reasons, you're going to want a jury room for a place for your folks to meet, if they need to prepare for the case, to deliberate, to wait until the hearing has started. That's a nice private place for your jurors to meet. So for our court, we come into the main room and then we move our jury, our judge, our clerk, and our bailiff all over to the jury room, while the staff and myself wait for the family and others that need to come from there. The courtroom in some youth courts, I know in the youth court in Marin, they use the main room for their courtroom. And so everybody comes in there, and then their jury can deliberate in the breakout room that's a jury room, but they use their courtroom. We use a separate breakout room for our courtroom. One of the nice things about Zoom is you can actually rename breakout rooms before you open them and move people. So we actually name the breakout room 1 jury room and breakout room 2 courtroom. That way we can move folks into the room and they know where they're going, because it'll say click join. And we're going to have an opportunity to look at breakout rooms later. We only have the respondent they come into the main room, we welcome them and tell them that they're going into the courtroom, and they move into the courtroom where we have one of our staff with them all the time. So the respondent and their family are never alone. They're always with someone in our courtroom. If you choose to use other breakout rooms, you may want to use them depending upon your court. And Zoom can be personalized for your court. So if you have counselors and you need to have folks meet with counselors, they can be in a breakout room where that you can move the respondent into that breakout room to meet with a counselor. Or maybe you are working with probation and you need them to have some time with a probation officer, but you can not do that in the courtroom. You can move them into a breakout room that's for probation or any other area. If you need a judge or a family waiting room, perhaps you're not ready for them, but you just need kind of a waiting area, you could have a breakout room where you put the judge, a family, or observers, just as kind of a separate waiting room where they're not kind of out there in the, waiting to be admitted by host land, but in a separate one.
So now what we want to do is give you guys an opportunity to ask any questions you may have, offer any suggestions you have, talk to us a little bit about where you get your cases from. Do you use judges? How do you select your volunteers and community partners? And just open up a dialogue. So let's practice using the participants tab and raising our hands, and let's ask some questions. Again, it's all about getting you engaged and learning how to use the virtual platform. So go ahead and unmute your mic and ask any questions that you may have at this point before we go on to the next stage, which is the intake process. And Sasha, if you have any questions in the chat, if you can let us know.
We don't currently have any questions in the chat box, but I see everyone has their hand raised. But I think that's from previous. How do you clear that?
Oh, okay. So was that all from previously, or I can't see the hand on my
No, I thought I raised my hand, but I clicked on the icon.
We have Alicia and Jenny Lynn that have questions and have raised their hands.
Okay, Alicia, what's your question?
Oops, sorry. I didn't mean to do that.
I think my question is regarding the community partners. We're barely launching ours, and I spoke with Mickey this morning, but I kind of have an idea that we need, of course, community service, counseling, parenting classes. Is there any other services that your youth courts provide that perhaps we can start looking into? Ours it's not officially launched yet. It's going to be in February.
So what we've been using is working with the Department of Mental Health, but again, it's going to go from court to court on who you work with. But I know that DMH is very open to working with youth courts if you reach out to a local representative.
Alicia, I'd also suggest Cal Poly Pomona. I think we talked a little bit about counseling. So you might want to reach out to some of the colleges and universities in the area, especially those that have counseling programs or social work programs that they may need hours and want to volunteer for hours and things like that. And don't forget, you know, the public defender's office, the DA's office, all of those folks also are the police. You are Ontario Police Department. I believe your court's going to be in Ontario. Their police activities league or their police union, you know, may also want to support and do activities. They do with us. San Bernardino Police Department does with us. Their police activities league is very involved in extracurriculars with our kids.
I think those are all excellent suggestions. I would also like to remind people that as you're looking for maybe cheap labor, if you will, but qualified, wonderful labor to help you with your courts, don't forget about AmeriCorps and the Vista Corps. The Vista Corps students are those that have graduated from college and are looking to gain some experience before they go out into the real world of work. So you can give them opportunities within your court. You come up with they are paid through the government program of AmeriCorps. I also had a senior corps member. She was about 75 years old when she came to work in our peer court program. She was wonderful. The kids loved her. She was like having a grandmother on site. And then the AmeriCorps students are just wonderful. And they're so eager to learn, and your responsibility is to provide them with some guidance in appropriate telephone conversation, confidentiality, whatever sort of clerical things, as well as communication skills. But don't forget about those programs. They're out there, and undoubtedly there's somebody in your community that has taken on the AmeriCorps workers, and you can go to them and ask, I could use 2 people in my program.
I know YAP in our area is, because they're doing
those are great
induction this week.
suggestions.
They have their AmeriCorps induction or ceremony this week in our area for AmeriCorps, Alicia.
Oh, okay. I see there's another question, Sasha, do we have about, are there hearings going on that may be able to observe? I think that question came from Jennifer. There are courts going on virtually right now, but it's a per county, per court type of situation. So you have to actually reach out to the courts that are active in your area and see what their dates are. I don't think we have a centralized database where we can tell you exactly what courts are having hearings. Unless someone else has it.
And also in the chat box, Jennifer from Shasta County was also saying they have to pay for AmeriCorps. It's not free, just as an added bit of information.
Our court is going, and we had an observer from our last virtual training webinar, and we're happy to host folks as we can. We can only have so many in any one session, and I believe Marin County is also going, and I know Dawn has hosted some other observers at the Marin County Youth Court if you're in Northern California.
And like you said, we're going to be covering confidentiality later. There was a couple questions about that.
So now you've selected a platform, you have your first case, and it's time to take the next step, which is a challenge, but that is to meet with the respondent and the parent in some kind of an intake process. So you may already have an intake process set up if you're operating a court now, and you're going to have to make some adjustments in the way that you usually have conducted that. One of the first things I would advise is to carefully go through the file so that you're very familiar with a young person and whatever the offense was, and maybe some background information about the family that file may contain. And then you're going to set up a meeting time with the respondent and the parent, be sure both are present. And you want to make sure that whatever platform you use for that introductory intake meeting, that you use the same platform as you're going to be using in your court hearing, so that they become familiar with that. And also so that you can assess whether or not they need any kind of assistance in getting the correct equipment to get onto Zoom, or maybe even what kind of Wi-Fi services they have available to them. This is a real challenge in trying to build rapport, to build a relationship virtually. Is, I think we're all learning, is a difficult thing to do. You don't have the benefit of really seeing body language. You don't have the advantage of more carefully observing what the relationship is between the parent and the child. So you really have to be attentive. And that's why I think being familiar with the file in advance is so helpful, because it's going to allow you to stay engaged with the participants by looking into the camera at all times, not having to thumb through a file, looking at the notes and wondering, oh, is this a single parent, or is there a language barrier, or what do I need to be looking out here? We'll move on to the next slide, and we'll talk a little bit now about some of the technical things that you're going to need to be prepared with. I will say, in working with the defendant or the respondent, whatever you term that young person, and the parent, you will want to not start off with, so I see you committed a petty theft, tell me what happened. That's pretty abrasive, and they're already nervous, and frankly, you are too. But start off with some softer questions. How's it going at school? Are you able to stay playing with your sports team? Some softer questions to sort of get everybody to relax a little bit before you start trying to delve into exactly what was involved in the criminal offense that the young person's committed. So again, what you'll want to make sure that you do is to review your documents that you're used to using in your court. Do you need to have parent signatures? Do you need permission to participate? And what kind of documents are you going to be able to have available to you in this new virtual setting? So there are some things that you can try out or investigate. DocuSign, DocuHub are programs that allow you to have the parent and the respondent sign the documents right there online. Or you may want to use Google Forms if that's something that you're used to, where the question is already there, or the name of the individuals are there, and all they have to do is check a box, and that would qualify for their signature if that is needed. Be sure that you are aware of any needs that the student has. Is this a student that has some kind of a disability? Does the parent have a disability? Do you need a translator? Is this a situation where maybe Spanish or Chinese is spoken at home, and that's the language that the parent is going to be comfortable in communicating with you on? Certainly, you'll want to know if the child has an IEP and what kind of accommodations that youngster is needing or getting at school, so that you can be cognizant of that as you're moving forward and making sure that you've got, that you've got all those particulars taken care of. If you have to get a translator, add some time on to the hearing, because that does take a definite going back and forth with translation. One of the things that I think Mickey's court has learned is that it's advisable to, we always say, have your mics muted, but rather than having to click that mic on and off, if the respondent and the judge, for example, both have their mics live, then you can alleviate some of sort of that difficulties or time consuming that's time where time is taken up just by clicking or clicking off. You'll also want to find out, does the family have, if you need a translator, do they have the ability to have some kind of an earphone or headphones in place that translator could be translating live rather than having to stop, wait for the translator, and so on. And I know that if those kinds of pieces of equipment are necessary, you need to be prepared to provide those and get those to the family so that the hearing runs smoothly. Again, have the judge and the respondent able to communicate so that it is more like a conversation. Questions get answered, documents get signed, jurors have the opportunity to ask questions. You really need to be thinking about what this whole process is going to look like in this virtual setting. Here are some things that you're going to want to think about as you're preparing your youth volunteers. So again, you want to make sure that the training format that you're going to use, the virtual format that you're going to use for your training, is the same one that you will be using for your hearings. And you'll see as we go along that the advantage of getting familiar with what Zoom does or doesn't have capabilities of is going to be really helpful. Do you, for example, want to host in each room? If you want to host or co-host in each one of your breakout rooms, we think that's a really good idea because it allows that co-host to be in control of the mics and the camera. But in order to make them co-hosts, that has to be done in the main room. So know that that's going to take some planning. Maybe you have them come in a little bit earlier than others that might be arriving, jurors, judges, and certainly the respondent and parent. In fact, it's a good idea to ask the parent and respondent to maybe not arrive or maybe 10 or so minutes after you've scheduled everybody else to arrive so that they're not stuck in that waiting room wondering what the heck is happening here. Even though there may be a co-host in the room with them, it's still, remember, they're nervous, they don't know what's going to happen, and you don't want them to be anxious any more so than they already are by sitting in the waiting room while other people are coming in and getting assigned to other rooms. Read your script. What is the script that you've been using in your courtrooms? Are you where the jury does all the questioning? Do you have a judge? Is that all going to take some adjustment? For example, most of us start court by saying, stand and raise your right hand. And Nigel, maybe you could demonstrate what that would look like online.
You get to see my belly.
Right. So how will you take care of that? Or do you want to see everybody's belly? I don't know, but I think you'll want to make an adjustment on that. Again, you want to know that if you're going to record the proceeding, you'll want to, first of all, notify everybody that it's going to be recorded. Don't record without making everyone aware of that. And know that you cannot do recordings in the breakout rooms. So again, you're going to have to do some planning in order to be able to accommodate any kind of recording that you might want to do. Again, we do think having adequate staff on site and involved is really, really important. So it may take more people than you're usually used to in order to have everything run smooth. Life happens. I know recently Mickey, in one of their hearings, had the experience of one of the co-hosts' Wi-Fi going down, and Mickey's that wasn't in the room, and if you're not in the room, you don't have control, and so lots of things to sort of think about that might be glitches in this little process as well. And then make sure that your youth that are going to be your volunteers are feeling really comfortable with the way this is all going to work. You do want your youth to make sure that whatever setting they're in as they are going to be hearing this case is a neutral setting. You don't want posters on the wall advertising points of view or political issues, or maybe even be careful about sports teams. I know some of the kids are pretty particular about who they root for and who they don't. You'll want to make sure that your young people are wearing appropriate attire, while most of their screen vision is going to be their upper body. You know, sometimes they get up in the middle of the hearing or such, and so you want to make sure that they're aware and cautious about their movements, and that it's appropriate. Keep the youth need to keep your youth volunteers need to keep their camera on at all times and their microphones muted. But you don't want the young person getting up and leaving the room, or sitting doing homework, or maybe eating dinner. You also want to make sure that whatever room that young volunteer is in is probably free from pets and siblings, if at all possible. We're trying to maintain confidentiality, and so we don't need to have others in the room as this young person is serving on your jury, for example. And then again, you may want the respondent and the judge to have their microphones live. So again, cameras, if they're going to be on, need to be on at all times. That way you have a point of observation, if you will, that everything is going smoothly, and there's nothing inappropriate, because if anything inappropriate is going on, you've got that co-host in the room that has the ability to either mute or to control the camera. You'll want to go over some virtual courtroom etiquette. Don't interrupt. Wait until you're called on. You can see that Nigel has taken us through some possibilities, and I think that would be an important aspect to include in your trainings. Try and find a quiet place. Help the students understand that what that background is looking at is going to be seen by everybody, and they need to be it needs to be appropriate, and they need to be cautious. And again, you've got your youth staff that's going to be able to monitor those activities.
Now we'd like to start talking a little bit about paying attention to trauma-informed practices. A big part of what happens with the youth court program is it opens up opportunities for you to start building a bridge and opening up your students, as well as yourself, as well as the parents, to the mentoring process. So we're going to play a brief video, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about paying attention to trauma-informed practices.
Early childhood experiences, both good and bad, have a large impact on our lifelong health. They even affect how our brains develop. Positive stress, like meeting a new caregiver, is a healthy part of early childhood. But negative or adverse childhood experiences, like abuse, neglect, or parental substance abuse, can create toxic stress. And toxic stress, built up over time, has been linked to poor health conditions later in life, like obesity and heart disease. But there are steps we can take to reduce the impact on our children's health. Building strong, safe, stable, and nurturing relationships and environments, both at home and in our community, can help prevent adverse childhood experiences and encourage the healthy development of our children. Ensuring children have a supportive adult they can count on also combats toxic stress, builds stronger brains, and sets children up to be successful members of our society. This adult doesn't have to be a parent. Any family or community member can help. By working together, we can help children thrive and build resilience to life's challenges.
So we want to be cognizant of the fact that all of our youth are going through a trauma right now because of the pandemic. And it does have mental health as well as physical health ramifications. So as you're building your youth court, as you're communicating with your youth, you want to be mindful in how you're communicating with your youth. When we're dealing with a normal situation, the youth have an opportunity to come to school. They have people who they can talk to who are outside of the family. For example, they can talk to their counselor, or they can talk to a teacher, and they can talk to friends. and they get that kind of human interaction that's missing during the pandemic with distance learning. So you want to be mindful that when you're connecting with your youth, that you actually build a bridge to connect. Some of the things you can do is start by sharing some of your own experiences. We think of mentoring from the perspective of peeling back the onion. You want to take back each layer and actively listen to what your youth is communicating with you. You want to build a relationship with the family as well as build a relationship with the student. You want to be transparent. So as Karen mentioned earlier, you want to maintain good eye contact. Don't do like I tend to do and start hunting for what you can see in the people's background and like, oh, what is that back there? And what do they have? And oh, why is she wearing that? Try to really stay engaged, actively listen, look at the camera, because when you look at the camera, there's a connection there. A lot of times we tend to duck our heads or look to the left because we have the computer screens in front of us. And if your setup is like mine, I'm looking at all over the place because I have 3 screens and I have things going on all of them. So try to be mindful of those little nuances that allow you to actually connect with your students. Next slide, please. Be aware that they may be embarrassed. And in fact, they are embarrassed. Just the fact of that they're in court right now is embarrassing. Let's face it, if you had to go to court for a traffic ticket and your boss happened to see you walk in that courtroom, you'd be like, oh, and it's for a traffic ticket, and we all have gotten one during our lives. So be aware that they are in a situation, they may be embarrassed. They'll be embarrassed about their surroundings. Some people come from a background that is financially challenged. And so because they don't have the finances, they don't have beautiful things behind them. So be mindful on teaching them how to set a background, such as the Halloween theme that I keep glancing down at and the kind of ghostly shadow that I'm looking at here. Be mindful, take the time out, teach them how to set virtual backgrounds, provide headsets, as Karen mentioned earlier, to your students so that you can cut down on some of the background noise. Because it's just a matter of time for me right now for my dogs to start barking. It's always like a fine line of trying to have a conference call and not have them barking in the background. So think of those type of things. Keep in mind, as I mentioned earlier, the usual support system is no longer in place. So they don't have teachers, they don't have counselors, they don't have their peers that they normally spend a lot of time with interacting. So they lose a lot of that human interaction that's needed for childhood development and growth. We also want to give you a resource in the 40 developmental assets. There's a PDF that you can go to. And when you go to it, I'm going to go ahead and post it in the chat as I'm speaking now. You go to it and there's these tips that you can use to communicate with your students and learn more. Let me see, that's Control V. So I just posted that link there in the chat. So make sure you visit that website. It's going to cover things on support, empowerment, boundaries and expectations. It's going to cover constructive use of time, commitment to learning, positive values. So there's a lot on that PDF. Visit that link, print out that PDF and learn from it. Remember, ultimately what we're here to do is change young lives. We want to create a paradigm shift. And in doing so, we have to create a relationship with the students. We can go to the next slide. And now Karen's going to talk to you guys a little bit about confidentiality. If you have a question, raise your hand or remember to post it in the chat so that we can answer those questions as they come. Karen, you're muted.
I'm just going to give a quick plug for that 40 developmental asset. It really is a strength building tool where you're always trying to move toward a young person toward having 40 strength-based assets. And you'll be able to assess with that tool kind of where the student is at this point. Search Institute is the author of that tool. It's been around a long time. It's gotten some revisions from time to time. But if you ever have the chance to do a Search Institute training, they're full day, sometimes 2-day trainings. Take advantage of it. They're just terrific and you will learn a lot. Definitely worth your time. So let's move on to confidentiality. This is a subject that I think with these Zoom hearings, we hear the most concern about. How are you going to keep this hearing confidential when you have your jurors at home and who knows who may be around listening into the case, when you just don't have the degree of control that you have when you have everybody together in a single environment? So I think it's very important to be honest and upfront with the parent and the defendant in assuring them that you're going to make every effort to maintain 100% confidentiality. But in fact, we know that we can't really promise that. So just be upfront, let them know the precautions that you've taken. Impress upon the jurors, again, they're used to, in many cases, taking an oath of confidentiality in the courtroom, and that may be something that you'll want to continue to do, again, with some revisions to your script. But you want your jurors to be cognizant of what's going on in the background of wherever it is that they're going to be hearing the case from. And you want to have them secure a spot that's quiet, free from distractions, and appropriate for hearing the case. If you are going to use an advocate, so many of you may in your court hearings now, once you have the respondent, you assign that respondent with a teen attorney, some kind of an advocate that sits with the respondent throughout the court hearing, meets with the respondent prior to the court hearing. All those things you can continue to do, but again, it takes some planning. So you want to make sure that you've got a staff person assigned. If the respondent and the advocate are going to meet, that is something that shouldn't be taking place without some kind of precautionary adult in place that can not necessarily interfere in the discussion, but just there in case things go wrong, or there's questions or somebody needs some help. Again, this is going to be that opportunity to find out in advance if the respondent has the adequate equipment. Do they need Wi-Fi? What is their internet service like? Probably most important, and it goes back to what we keep sort of saying here, and that Nigel is just to once again refer to, building this rapport, creating a relationship so that this young person, even though embarrassed, even though frightened, even though very, very nervous about appearing in front of their peers, that they'll learn from the advocate, look, we're all teenagers. The important thing is to be honest, to tell the truth, be accountable, answer the question, and you're going to come out fine. We're here not only to hold you accountable, but we're here to help you move forward in a more positive way so that you don't have to repeat this kind of activity. You also want to make sure that you at least notify the referring agency. It doesn't mean that you're expecting to have a representative from probation or the police department or the school that may have referred the case to you, but I think it's at least a courtesy to let them know that in fact you have scheduled a hearing, that you are moving forward, and then they may be interested in attending, or they certainly may be interested in knowing what the results of the hearing was. And then if you're going to bring any additional participants in, any witnesses, you want to hold them in the waiting room until the appropriate time for them to speak. And just again, making sure everybody understands that this process isn't the same as just walking in the door of a courtroom and saying, oh, you go here, you go there. It really takes some very, very careful planning so that you don't inadvertently get people together that you didn't mean to have together. For example, you wouldn't want to accidentally put the respondent and parent into that jury room before the hearing ever began. So it takes some practice, that's for sure. But again, we want to encourage you to give it a shot. Again, if you
about observers, and
yes,
one of the things that you're going to discover if you start virtual is that people are going to want to come watch. That's happened to us now that we've got a few under our belt. We've been ready to have observers. There are, though, I think some etiquette and some best practices for having observers in your virtual courtroom. So the first thing is when they're in the hearing, you want to make sure that they're on mute and that they have their camera off. That way the family and the respondent know that while they're there, they're not an active part. Also, the judge will know the folks that are in that room that have their cameras off and that are muted are not part of the process. You may want them to also take your oath of confidentiality. We do that prior to the hearing in the jury room. For the judge, for any observers, for our bailiff and our clerk, who wouldn't normally take an oath as part of the process in the hearing. We do that prior to that. We also, we allow our observers to watch both the jury preparation and the deliberation. And then they come back after us to debrief in the jury room. And so that we can both get their feedback. And they can also ask questions if they have questions of the jury or of us as staff about that. I think, like I said, as you go, and as more people want to start youth courts, I think we'll see more observers. So that's something you just really want to think about. Also, you want to mitigate for the number, because as you can see on here, there's only so many people you can see on the screen at once. And while most of the time we don't have sharing on, any kind of document sharing on, the judge needs to be able to see everybody in the room. So you want to make sure you don't have so many people on there when you think about who do you have in there as staff and jurors and everybody. You want to make sure that you limit your observers so that it's not disrupting your process. When you're conducting the hearing, I recommend that you have at least 3 staff people. We actually have now moved to 4 staff people, but you want to have one of your staff in the jury room at all times, when there's folks in the jury room, in the courtroom at all time, and you actually need a Zoom facilitator. You need someone that's going to be, while things are going on, admitting people and moving people, and it's really hard to do that while you are also trying to help the jury prepare or working with the family and monitoring the courtroom. The reason that we now suggest 4 folks that Karen alluded to earlier, in our very first virtual hearing, our jury room staff person lost her internet. And so I was both trying to facilitate, admit everybody, and do the jury room at the same time. So we now have our on deck circle staff person who is able to fill in any role should one of us lose our internet. To that end, all of our staff are made cohorts. So you have to do that in the main room. That everything is on when you're in that first main room, you have to turn everything on. So we rename our breakout rooms. We make sure that the screen sharing is turned on for all of our staff so that they can share their screens when they need to. We make sure all the staff are co-hosts. We take care of all of that in there. We also rename our jury, but we don't do that until we move into the jury room. So I don't open the breakout room until I've completed all of those controls and our jury and our judges arrived. Yesterday we had an incident, and there's things, every time you do a hearing, right now it's kind of like when you very first started youth court. If you had to remember, and every time you did it, you learned something new. Well, our family showed up pretty much before anybody. We left them out in the waiting room for a while, but then we were a little concerned because people can just hang up in the virtual world, and you didn't have that. It's kind of harder to leave when you're actually at the courtroom. And so we had to end up opening the breakout rooms a little earlier than we normally would have. And I moved the family and one of our staff into the courtroom. Our staff then explained to them that they were early and they were going to have a little bit of a wait, but it gave them some time to talk and build rapport and, you know, just really do some relationship building with our staff person and our clerk when she got over there. So once we do that, we move the judge and the jury into the jury room. We move the family into the courtroom. You do need to instruct your family on how to join the breakout rooms, and so that they're not just kind of waiting after you know, like, oh, we're sending you the breakout room, and they think that it's going to happen. It doesn't actually work that way, and we'll show you in a moment when we talk about breakout rooms. And again, I've talked about renaming them already. So we're going to give you an opportunity to actually experience the breakout rooms.
Mickey, we have a question real quick beforehand. Okay. Do you set up the breakout rooms when setting up the meeting or at the start of the meeting?
I set it up at the start of the meeting. It's just easier for me. I go in just as, you know, as everybody's coming in, I do the breakout room and do that. Until you actually start moving everybody, you have the ability to rename and do everything like that. So I set up my 2 rooms, but I don't move anybody into them until I'm ready. And that's just part of the process of starting court on any given day.
Mickey, I wanted to ask a question about something that you had said earlier. You had said that if needed, you have the ability to remove somebody from a breakout room. What does that process look like?
So on everybody's little, when you look at your name in your little box, there's 3 dots. And whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Sorry, I was trying to look the 3 dots, and that's what happened. So there's 3 dots, and in the 3 dots, there are a lot of different controls. You can ask to unmute. You can, you know, that's where you hit the chat. You can rename yourself. Oh, we rename our folks. So we take everybody's name off. So like our 4-person is 4-person, clerk, bailiff, and then juror 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we rename the judge so-and-so. So yesterday it was Judge Young. And so we do all of that as well when we get into the jury room. That's one of the other things that we do. But you just hit the 3 dots, hit remove, and they're gone. The other thing I would just say, because I don't think there's any place for us to actually talk about this. We had an interesting experience too last week. For the first time, the jury was going along. It seemed like everything was going really well, and all of a sudden, the respondent was gone. We had our case manager. We always have the case manager is usually one of our staff there, and so this case manager called the family. And she just didn't like the question. She just decided it was too hard and she didn't want to do it. And so she hung up and quit. She did a voluntary quit. Well, that wasn't something we ever really envisioned because it's really hard to get up and walk out of the courtroom, but it isn't so hard to hit leave meeting. So we're actually changing a little bit of, you know, we're trying to think about, okay, what do we need to do to, you know, when you've got the kids that you need to kind of do those hardball questions and really get at, like, how do you do that in a way that doesn't want to make them shut down? How much relationship building, you know, and how do you know, having the good juror, bad juror, you know, to try to, you know, who's going to hit the hard balls and who's going to build the relationship. And we actually they were asking, you know, her some questions about things she wanted to do, you know, in life that she had talked about earlier, but it wasn't enough. So you may have that. That is one thing with a virtual hearing that's much easier, is if they decide in the midst of a hearing that they don't want to do this anymore, they're gone like that. There's no like getting to talk to them about it or, you know, following them out, you know. Although we did call, and fortunately the mom did answer and we were able to talk about, you know, the situation.
And is there no way for you to block that exit?
No, you can't stop somebody from leaving, from hanging up. And you know, at first everybody just thought she lost her internet. It wasn't until the phone call that we actually knew there was a problem, because she just quit. So,
I'm out of here.
yeah, so it was a little bit of a surprise, but you know, that we're continuing to learn and refine based on, our experiences every time. Our hearing yesterday didn't look, had some similarities to our first hearing, but we've grown a lot just by those experiences, and you will too. As your court goes through and you think, okay, I'm going to mirror my court exactly, and then you find things that aren't going to work for you in the virtual world that you did in the real world. In terms of, that goes for the disposition as well, trying to modify your dispositions to meet, virtual. Do you have the capacity for the classes that you had? Do you have the access? How are your partners doing their virtual classes, or are they meeting in person? If you have a class that's, some folks were, right on county lines, and one county's open and the other isn't. So there are some interesting things. So I'm going to go ahead and open if there's not another question, we're going to have plenty more time for questions. I'm going to open the breakout rooms, and you guys are going to be divided either with Karen or with Nigel. The same thing's going to happen in both, but we just wanted you to experience the process of going into the breakout room. One of the things that you need to, I assign manually, you can assign automatically, but we assign because if they're assigning, I can't guarantee that the family doesn't go in with the jurors, right? So we do it. You can also let participants choose room. Those are the options within Zoom, but I believe for the control, you assign manually. So once you open the breakout rooms, you can go ahead and assign folks. And one of the things that you need to tell the family, the key thing is you tell them you're going to see the word join, and you're going to need to click join to be able to do that. So you're either going into Nigel's room or Karen's room, and when you see that, go ahead and click it, and you'll have that opportunity to go ahead there. So the first room, you guys are going to go ahead and go. And the second room, you guys will go ahead and go as well. Karen, you need to click.
My message says that I've been invited to join Nigel's room.
Oh, that's okay. Let me move it. Sorry. There you go. Sorry about that. Wrong one.
Thank you.
Actually just connected with Chuck from the State Association this morning. We met in a conference earlier this week, and so I'm looking at developing a youth court here in Butte County. So he told me about this webinar, and so I thought I'd join in and kind of hear a little bit more about this pivot and transition to the online virtual hosting. While I kind of get our steering committee together.
Oh, okay. So you're starting from scratch.
Correct, during COVID, so this should be fun.
So where in Butte County are you, Miranda?
I'm in Chico.
Okay, so I'm in Shasta, I'm in Redding.
Oh yeah,
We're
I saw we
neighbors.
had Redding up there. Okay.
You know.
Awesome. Wonderful.
And what do you do, Miranda?
Oh, currently I do disaster case management.
We used to have a youth court about a year ago or so. We ceased it a little bit, and we're trying to relaunch it again and continue the work in Ontario. So I'm here with you guys just to learn as much as I can, and from Miki as well, who's very well experienced in this.
Great. And do we have others? So, Alicia,
yeah.
Pardon me?
I was just saying that's it.
Okay. So do you feel, what else do you feel, Alicia and Jenny Lynn, what else do you feel you might need in order to take that step off the diving board and jump in?
If you want, I can go. Well, I need staff.
Oh,
Karen.
you need staff.
It's only me and Michelle who left Step Out, who is running the show. So I'm in the process of hopefully, like you gave me all these ideas of recruiting for judges and people who can help me out. That is gonna be my next step, starting to look into it. My goal is to launch it in February. And my recruitment session is all November and December. I did touch up with probation, and the probation officer, Richard Martinez, he's gonna be helping me out with the case referrals. So that's a good thing.
Perfect. That's
Yeah.
big. That is big.
Been to sending you cases?
Yes.
Great.
So yeah, that's I mean, that was the biggest accomplishment out of the whole thing, trying to figure out how am I gonna talk to probation, but it happened, and it's going well. So now I just need the people to get on board so we can get ready to go.
And are you near a college or a community college?
Yes, we're near, like Mickey said, we're near Cal Poly and Cal State San Bernardino, Chaffey College as well.
So you might want to recruit, students very often are looking for internships or, low paying positions, but they're eager to help and get involved in the community. And I would go, many of those schools, in fact, the ones that you've mentioned, have administration of justice or some kind of a legal, lots of times a pre-law program. Those would be great places to maybe get some recruits of kids that not only want to just volunteer, but also are really interested in the subject.
Thank you. Yes, I'm gonna look into all these ideas because I hit into a roadblock, not knowing where to go afterwards. But with you guys' presentation now, I feel like it opened up the possibilities. So thank you.
Good. And Jenny Lynn, where are your cases coming from right now?
Most of them are coming from our probation department. Sometimes we get them from schools, but right now mainly probation.
I'm sorry, Jenny Lynn, where are you?
Shasta County.
So you've got Jennifer to hold your hand.
Yes, and Jennifer and Jazz have been through this already, so this was actually good for me to come on board. And really, I love what I'm hearing. I use Zoom for a lot of different parts of my job, so I'm very familiar with it, and we're all getting better. I think really right now to hit that platform and jump off of it, we just kind of maybe need to do a dry run and make sure that we do have an awesome jury and a lot of people that can help us out. So I'm really hoping that we can just coordinate everybody and maybe kind of do a practice, like a mock, a mock in order to see how it goes.
In Humboldt County, we did a couple different mock hearings with our youth leadership and got them familiar and practice, worked out some of the kinks, and that was a really good approach. And we invited our referring agents to sit in and view that, to provide feedback or just kind of transparency on what our process was going to look like. And it actually served as a really great opportunity where a lot of those officials hadn't actually taken the time to come observe court, but because it was a Zoom virtual platform, they dropped in and they got to see it and were really impressed. So that was good.
Yeah,
That's a great idea.
all right.
Welcome back. I think we're getting everybody here. All right, so that's kind of the breakout rooms concept. And the experience of kind of joining and leaving and moving the breakout rooms. Is there any question about the breakout rooms? How to use them? If not, I will move on. So we've talked a lot about relationships, and we're going to just see a little video about restorative practices and how that affects relationship.
Our world is changing at a breathtaking pace. Social patterns that have long characterized human life are changing dramatically around the globe, diminishing social bonds within families, schools, workplaces, and communities. But humans are hardwired to connect. Just as we need food, shelter, and clothing, we also need strong and meaningful relationships to thrive. With all this in mind, what is restorative practices? Restorative practices is an emerging social science that studies how to strengthen relationships between individuals and within communities. When put into practice, the effects are profound. In schools, students experience greater safety and sense of belonging, resulting in improved behavior, less bullying, and less violence. In workplaces, leaders facilitate direct communication among staff and address conflict as it arises. The result is higher performance, greater accountability, and effective collaboration. In criminal justice, new options allow victims and offenders, friends and family, to repair the emotional harm caused by crime. Throughout our neighborhoods, restorative practices give regular people more voice in the issues that matter most. In a nutshell, restorative practices is the science of relationships and community. Your individual daily interactions have a big impact on the world around you, at your job, with young people, and throughout your community. How we relate matters. This video was brought to you by the International Institute for Restorative Practices. To learn more, attend our flagship event, Basic Restorative Practices, enroll in a graduate course, or join us at a world conference.
So IIRP is basically, they're the gurus that everybody goes to on restorative practices. That's the main organization, and they do much of the training in the restorative space. And their focus is really on relationship building. And we call our court a restorative youth court because we use not only the restorative questions, but we're really looking at how do we use social emotional learning and trauma-informed practices and strength-based practices to build relationship. Much of being virtual, like this two-dimensional world that we're in right now, it's a little more difficult to build relationships in the same way and of finding ways of connecting. And so it does take some more work. But as we've talked to you today, and as you've been thinking about how you might implement some of this, I'd like to hear from some of you that are attending today. Go ahead and unmute yourself and think about what are some ways that you're thinking that you might build virtual relationships based on what you've heard so far today. Alicia, Miranda, Jenny Lynn, anybody? What might you think?
I think that's what we're all trying to figure out is how to build them.
Well, one of the things I think that we can each do, we each have special talents and skills and areas of expertise. And that's a way that we can offer ourselves out to help others. And there's such need right now in so many different areas, whether it's housing or food or educational tutoring, maybe just somebody to talk with, an elder, folks that are in the convalescent hospital, certainly not going there, but there's ways that through Zoom or other platforms that we can be communicating and trying to not try to break down these walls of sort of such isolation. That I think that's one way that you might think about, well, what talent do I have? What skill do I have that maybe I could reach out to somebody that might find my skill or talent useful?
Another thing we can do is make sure that those that we want to work with know that they have direct access to us. Again, just making sure you reach out to them and say, hey, just want to follow up with you, see how things are going. Here's my phone number. I'm going to schedule a Zoom meeting with 3 or 4 other individuals. I think you'd be perfect to be a part of the discussion, and just really open up the door and that line of communication. Access is very important, letting them know that they have access to you when they need it.
One of the things that we've used that has been successful so far is we changed one of the things on our disposition, and we call it a peer support circle. And it's our volunteers as well as our jurors. And we're using 2 students who have volunteered from the University of Redlands. And they're kind of having circle talks with the kids and just talking, like even like when we first get into the jury room and when we debrief, sometimes just giving them times to just chit chat. Because, you know, when they're in class on the virtual platform, it's all about class. And when we're in court, it's all about the hearing. But they're not getting like that peer interaction. So just giving them time to talk to each other about whatever. One of our kids ended with the question, the kids from U of R were like, what, you know, do anybody have any questions you want to ask everybody? And one of the kids said, what's your biggest fear? And the other staff, Ms. Taylor and I both answered in the chat, because we usually don't participate, but occasionally we'll put an answer in the chat. But you know, the college kids answered, the other kids all answered, and they had this really interesting dialogue just about the fact that we all have fears. And I thought that was interesting, given how much fear there is right now in this, is our, you know, post-pandemic world ever going to come? So any other thoughts before we move on, Miranda or Elisa?
I do.
Yeah.
I have some. I just wanted to share in Humboldt County, what we do is we spend, well, so a lot of our teens talk about being extra emotive during the hearing, you know, virtually be extra expressive, and that helps let people know that they're engaged and genuinely showing interest. The other thing is that we do spend some extra time on relationship building at the beginning. So the jurors are, introduce themselves and also answer a kind of a check-in question to get that kind of mutual sharing going. So it'd be like, you know, my name's Joey, I go to Eureka High, and my favorite thing to do after school is yada yada yada, because yada yada, you know. So there's this mutual sharing, and that kind of helps build relationships. Hey, this is a person, they're interested in me, they're sharing something interesting, and we try to really focus on that. We also ask the question at the beginning of the youth themselves, hey, because this is virtual, what do you feel helps you open up and feel safe to share, and what do you need to create that environment? And then they're answering that question themselves and asking that of each other.
That's a really good point. Thank you for sharing, Sasha. That's a really good point. Anything else on this before we move on? Question? Cool. All right. So somebody we talked about or had asked about, you know, your partners. And, you know, the first thing is who are your partners? You want to make sure, we say, make sure to include your partners and make sure that they're trained and they know what to do and how to participate in your virtual hearings or your virtual activities. But it's also like, who are your partners? And, you know, the list is pretty much endless, right? So for some folks, it's judges that are currently sitting on the bench that really want to participate. For us, our Superior Court judges sit on our advisory, but they made the decision not to participate as judges in our youth court as much as they support it. So our judges come from all over the place. We have judges from the police department, from the sheriff's department. We have public defenders, we have district attorneys, we have private attorneys. We have folks from Chino Men's Prison, from the correctionals, that come and act as our judges. So, you know, any law enforcement based partner may be someone that wants to be a judge. And when we're in real life right now, we don't have the robes, but when we're in real life, they enjoy putting on that robe, because we have judges' robes when we're in life more than anyone. We're a school district, right? So we reach out to all the community-based organizations in the area. We reach out to our drug and alcohol program is actually run by Loma Linda University Hospital. You know, so you don't be afraid to ask, because you might think, well, I don't even know who could, would even be interested. Our office is across the street from the Highway Patrol. They can't participate as judge, but they participate. We do a thing called Meet with Law Enforcement, where we have a rap session with a law enforcement partner to help do community policing. And the Highway Patrol participates in that way. So you just never know. So don't be afraid to ask, and be as creative as you possibly can with your team of partners, because they're all out there. And right now, everybody's looking for a way to be involved, because a lot of their normal activities are shut down. Like I said, they can't go into juvenile hall, and they can't go into schools, and they can't, there's all these things that the folks can't do. And so we're one thing that they can do, if you're willing to have that. If you're working with schools, just making sure that you, if you're a community-based organization, schools are more and more looking for restorative practices. And so looking to them, going into their student services department or their child welfare and attendance department, and trying to partner there, working with having them work with their school boards. Everybody's looking at ways to reduce suspension and expulsion, and chronic absenteeism is at the top of the list right now. So I went to a 3-hour session on, and part of it was on chronic absenteeism yesterday, to help us with our kids in absenteeism. So all of those things they're looking for folks to partner with, and youth court is a great place for that to happen. We're wrapping up, Nigel.
So now that we're starting to wrap up, we want to make sure that this doesn't end the discussion. We want to make sure we open up the door for you guys to get an opportunity to join us at the California Association of Youth Courts. We do some amazing things throughout the year. One of the big things we do is an annual summit. This year is going to be really exciting because we're going completely virtual. And so we're going to do a virtual summit where you're going to experience some of these breakout rooms, some interactive activity, and you could possibly learn some tips on how to communicate with youth virtually if the pandemic is still going. We also want you to go over to our website and check out some of our resources there, possibly become a member of the California Association of Youth Courts. We have a few links that's going to be in the slides. We will be providing the slides to you guys after the meeting, as long as you filled out the form. In those slides, you can click the links. If you click the Google Maps link, it will show you where all of the California Association of Youth Courts members are located and where teen courts are throughout the state. So it's pretty useful. So we extend this opportunity to you to join us, partner with us in developing relationships with other courts throughout the state. We also send out a newsletter, so you'll get to kind of stay up to date with what's going on throughout the association and with courts across the state. So join us is what I'm saying. Join. If you need to reach out to us,
Sorry.
What?
You double click there. Sorry about that.
Okay, that's okay. If you need to reach out to us, here's all of our professional emails. So feel free to reach out to us, ask us questions. We'll respond back. We'll get you in contact with the appropriate party if we cannot answer. So we're definitely open to continue the conversation and answer questions. Our emails are in slides, so when you receive the slide presentation, you'll have that. Now we're going to open it up for questions. Are there any thoughts or anything that you would like to ask us while we're still on? We have about 7 minutes before this webinar is over. So if you have questions, feel free to ask. Any of us will be more than happy to answer. We have a lot of history and knowledge here today.
Do you know where you find the regional liaisons from our website? Is there a link?
directly to the regional liaisons, that would be a question.
Well, to the maps where they're listed.
That was the link on the Google, on the previous slide. So when they get that, if they click on that Google link, it'll take them right to the maps.
Okay. But on our website, if somebody goes to our website, they can't find it easy.
Sasha?
It is on the website. I don't recall where exactly on the website it is.
I think it's under resources.
Okay. And I did put in the chat box evaluation. So if you can take the time to fill that out, click on that, and you can fill it out right after our session. But I think when the slides go out, we might be able to include the evaluation in that as well.
Any questions, Alicia, Miranda, Jenny Lynn, Donna, anybody? We answered all your questions. I'm feeling really.
I actually have a question. And I'm not part of a youth court. I'm in the process of putting together a steering committee to bring one to our area. When it comes to the virtual meetings or even in person, are there any sort of, when just speaking to trauma-informed practices and building team and community with the youth, is there any overlap with utilizing like relaxation techniques to like kind of set the stage and the tone either before or after, or any integration? I know some in the breakout session they were talking about SEL integration. Is there, and sometimes mental health participates on some level with the youth courts. Can anybody speak to that and what that looks like in your local program?
I would quickly, I'm in Humboldt County. We start a lot of our sessions with a 1-minute triangle breathing video and encourage them to do deep breathing, calming, centering kind of practice. And that's an easy way to introduce something to them. We also invite support members in, if we have a tribal youth who has like a specific tutor or school mentor, we always invite them into the process as well. That's my little piece. I'm sure others have other things to say.
I echo Sasha. Walk them through some type of breathing exercises, teach them how to relax their body. We tend to be tense whenever we're in virtual meetings because we sit up straight, our shoulders are back. And so that just creates an unnatural tension in our body. So just teach them how to relax, calm down, practice some breathing exercises, and that tends to center them, just kind of echoing what Sasha said.
And on the back end, we've partnered with Cal State San Bernardino in their graduate school for counseling. And so when we were in the real world, they sent interns to us, and we did our individual counseling on site with the kids there. Now that we're virtual, we're using their virtual. They have the CAYC Counseling Center, and so our students, we just send the referral to them when we say, hey, they need individual or family counseling, and then they take it, and it's still the same interns. It's just they're supervised by Cal State because we can't supervise them right now that we're virtual, but so they go ahead and they supervise, but it's still the same partnership, and it gives their students still accessing the hours that they need, and our kids are getting the help that they need from home. So and then we've seen a big uptick in the need for counseling.
Mm-hmm. And reach out to DMH. Department of Mental Health is for our teen court. They've been very responsive, and they send someone out to every hearing. Sometimes we'll have multiple therapists or social workers there. So just reach out to them. They've been very open.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
And just Alicia, I'll hook you up with that because they could use more students. So right now it's because they don't have access to schools. So.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it so much.
Since you're local.
But so far you have answered all my questions, and I'll continue reaching out to you guys as I keep going, because I'm sure I'm going to have more and more as I keep on moving forward with every step of the way.
So then as we end up, we want to thank you guys for coming. We are having another roundtable, a sharing innovations roundtable that'll be on November 17th. So we will send you an invitation to that as well, if you filled out the Google form at the beginning of that. I think we're skipping December, Jennifer, Sasha, correct? And then we'll start back up in
Yes.
January. I think we're doing truancy in January. And there'll be other webinars leading to our summit that Nigel alluded to at the end of the year. We would like you to please complete the evaluation and give us feedback so that we know, what we need to do to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the folks that come. But we really appreciate you coming to our encore presentation today. And Nigel, Karen, are there any last words before we say goodbye?
I would just say mark that third Tuesday of each month, except for the month of December. We're going to try and stay true to that, to have virtual meetings, presentations and on topics. But we're trying to meet the needs of our courts here in the state. And so we're hoping that we can continue to provide services to you on that third Tuesday. We're available, of course, in between, but that will be an hour-long program every week, or excuse me, every month from 3:30 to 4:30. So we're hoping that time frame fits, and we're always happy to address whatever questions you might have.
And I would just say, looking forward to working with you guys in the future. And it's always a pleasure to have these discussions with like-minded individuals that have a passion for our youth.
So thank you all very much for coming today.
Thank you so much. Thank you
And we
so
will
much.
see you in November.
All right.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.